Since the dawn of time, man has been curious. And for almost as long, the Vibes Broadcast Network has sought the truth. Investigate, discuss, explore. Okay, maybe in other episodes, but this one is just listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I have here Miss Felicia Johnson, and she is an all-intuitive life coach and also a webcaster. And we're going to get to know her and a little bit about what she does and hopefully get a positive message today. So let's just start off. You tell us a little bit about you.
Aloha, Kyle. It is so
Aloha.
nice to be with you in this show today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So, my name, Felicia, means happy. But there was a time I was not happy. And here's what contributed to that. I grew up in a military family, so we moved around from place to place. And in that time, with the expectations of military life and the goals, and for those that you're watching, I'm an African American female that maybe only are listening audio. I had the expectations I had to be twice as good because I may not get another opportunity at doing something. If I screw it up, they may not let someone that looks like me do that. So as you're young, that brought like a lot of success for me because I would get the A's. I would do all the hit the goals and make all of those achievements. But then fast forward when I'm getting ready to, I graduate from college. Okay, I'm fine. Going to add my career, the stressors that come with that. Get married, all the stressors that come with expectations of doing that. Become more into my Christianity background, all the expectations that come with being a Christian wife and add kids, adding all that, still maintaining your career. Like I felt like such a fraud because I wasn't doing things what I thought as well.
Mhm.
And so then that kind of literally hit the breaking point to where I had my come to Jesus moment. And I was like, look, you're going to have to show me like, cause I don't get it. I remember literally driving down the road and I like took my hands off the wheel and that term, Jesus take the wheel. I was like, oh, you're funny. I was like, cause you gonna have to take this wheel cause I'm done. And so at that moment, that's where it also collided with my spiritual abilities because right in front of me, all of a sudden appeared a white truck because I'm at a stoplight at this point. And there's no other markings on it whatsoever. And then I looked and there was a black and white sign that simply said, do not be dismayed, for I'm your present help, Isaiah 41:10.
Mhm.
And I looked around and I was like, okay. And then from that point, they then gave me another message, Emmanuel, that talked about you've done all this time, you've been smart. You've heard the phrase in your career, work smarter, not harder. Now it's time for you to live smart. And then that's when they sent me on this journey of being able to live smart so I can ascend to new levels of success and then ultimately live out my namesake of being happy. And that's the journey that I've been on ever since.
Okay, when we talked before we started the show, we are talking
Okay.
about your abilities as an intuitive.
Mhm.
How did you come into knowing about your abilities, and what made you decide to pursue? I don't know, maybe enhancing your
Included,
abilities.
yeah, telling that. So interestingly enough, it was, as we say, the signs or the voice was always there.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is you think, oh, it's just your normal mind just kind of thinking things. But what I realized, like in that moment when I was frustrated, that there was starting to be external signs that would come to me. To where it's like I didn't make up that all of a sudden I see this sign that says, your present help. And so when I began to look back and think like there was always this voice that was saying messages to me.
Mm-hmm.
So like for example, my husband and I met. I was literally writing down. This is back in the day. I was literally writing down my pager number because it was like I could control, if I called this dude back or not. And as I'm writing, right, and as I'm writing my pager number down, Emmanuel comes in and says, "No, give him your home number." And it didn't freak me out because I heard this first report, and I just simply marked out that number and wrote down my home number. And hence we've been together for 24 years now. So it was signs like that. But I wasn't telling anybody, Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
I was not saying like, oh yeah, this voice told me or this manual, because I didn't grow up with per se with a Christian background. Like I describe it as, my dad was mad at Jesus for a while. And so I wasn't expected that we have to go to church every week and do all these different things. Like I knew of it, Christianity, but not having to go through the doors of the church. So after I had met my husband, that's when I started developing my own relationship. We would go to church on a regular basis. I even became a sign language interpreter in the church. That's
Oh
where I
wow.
learned about channeling for the first time. Um, so I was doing all these things, but I still wasn't labeling it intuitive, clairvoyant, clairaudient, or anything like that. It would just be like, oh, okay, there's this thing that's kind of going on. And then as the time went on and they were having me to awaken to certain things, that's when I realized, oh, okay, maybe. Because then the final trigger was my family had started calling me jokingly a witch. And I was like, at this point, having in Christian background, I was like, no, I'm not a witch. Why are y'all calling me this witch? They were like, oh, we're just messing with you, but we all know that you're this witch. And I'm like having the expectations of, no, I have to be perfect. I do all these different things. I'm not, all the judgment that comes with being a witch.
Mm-hmm.
It eventually transitioned to I didn't say anything. It was just like, whatever. Till, which is ironically enough, no accident, that on my year anniversary last January, my husband and I went to New Orleans. And then that's where I say I came out of the spiritual closet to him. And I was like, I don't describe it as a witch, but here's this. And when we had that conversation, it was so freeing. It was so nonchalant because he basically was like, yeah, I already knew. He was like, you've always described or said things like this. I was like, I already knew that. Like, but it was freeing for me. It was saying, okay, this is who I am. And then
Mm-hmm.
from there on, I just went from there. It was, studying more about, spirituality, oracle cards, crystals, Christianity, the Bible, like just being open to whatever it is that they wanted to feed me and help me to understand about that. Because what I realized is that I was hiding in plain sight. It was the last
Right.
piece that I was being a fraud about because I was hiding a piece of who I was. And so now I'm no longer having to do that. Now I'm able to serve in that capacity to help other people to be able to release their fears, uncertainty, and doubts, their imposter syndrome, and help them to ascend to new levels of success. So that's been a part of the journey. From there, it's been very quick um, since that time, but it's been beautiful at the same time, and I'm loving the journey that I'm on.
So how are you able to I don't know to increase that ability? Because I know I hear my wife and other people talk
Mm.
about, I do this and that to come more into my abilities. Like what exactly do you
Mm-hmm.
do?
Okay, well, one thing is the mindset of I changed the language, and it was talking about as I talk about live smart. One of the phrases is talk wisely. That's the T. And instead of because I came from the background of always reading the books, studying, getting A's, so it became very uh, masculine energy heavy. And so I realized that I had to allow more of my divine feminine in and changing the word. So instead of saying I have to learn how to do these things, instead it was I'm simply remembering these things because they had already been instilled in me all this time. They're instilled in you, they're instilled in everybody. You just have to remember that you have those abilities. So that was the first thing was just changing the language that It's not about necessarily opening a book and having to study and do all these different things. It's like, open the book. The book is just helping me to remember what it is that I already know.
Mm.
So for me, it is about being present in the moment of, if something keeps coming up, like for example, one of the things is a bird used to cross my path every single day. And when it first started out, it used to be like, dang, why is this bird always flying in front of my freaking window? It's going to hit my window. It's going to boo boo or whatever. Like, and then it became, um, that's their way of saying how they're getting my attention. What am I thinking about every time this bird crosses my path? Was it like if I was driving to my W-2 job and I'm frustrated at having to go in there and they're coming by like, hey, change your mindset. Hey, like we're here. Like they were encouraging me versus being annoying. So it's a matter of just simply awakening to where you're at in that moment. And then trusting where they lead you. Are you drawn to cards? Are you drawn to watching certain, TV shows? Are you drawn to sounds? What is it that it is for you? And then just continue down that path with an open mindset and releasing the judgment. That's
So
how you get stronger and stronger in your abilities. Yeah.
I know a lot of times folks will talk about looking for different signs and like numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I'm noticing the say like 1111 or
Yes, that's the number.
333 and all those kind of things. So if I'm more mindful of what I'm thinking of at that moment, is that I guess how I'm getting the interpretation of what the sign is.
Yes, yes. So, because like if, for example, the 1111, generally speaking, that is a master number. It is one of the earlier signs that most people will start to notice. It was the case for me, but it was actually something that was frustrating in the sense of, I remember my girl used to post 1111 on her Instagram page. It would be just a picture of her phone with 1111, and I used to have judgment like, why do you keep posting 1111 on your Instagram? Like that's not what is that? And it would come up and come up. And then when I connected that with another scenario, I said, oh, this is a sign, because she was part of my initial journey when I went to her and I said, okay, tell me, what is this 1111? And they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And she was able to then say, okay, you're now open. You were meant to see all those. And then that's part of the journey that I went on. But I realized that those numbers were, I would have these negative thoughts. That's when I think the birds or the numbers, it's like I'm judging people like, well, what is this? This doesn't make any sense. And da-da-da. It was catching my attention. So then that's when I started to open it and see myself and awaken, learning more about, what are you frustrated about? What is going on? What is it that you want? What does this mean? What are your emotions? And so it does give you insight into what that means. So with the 1111, yeah, notice. Are you always in a mood when the 1111 comes up? Are you happy? It could be a sign for that, like, I'm with you. Is it that you had just asked the question? Remember telling me how I saw that sign? You're frustrated about something, 1111 comes in as an encouragement message to say, we're with you. Because generally speaking, those things catch people's attention versus the voices. Because a lot of times, I think we talked a little bit about this in the beginning. Voices sometimes can be scary for people because they make you think like you're crazy.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Like, because like, oh, the voices in your head and all the judgment that comes with that. So being
Yeah.
clairaudient is one of the more kind of challenging like ones, because people think like, oh, you're crazy if you're hearing voices. But that's how they figure, like, what way can they get your attention without scaring you?
Mm. Yeah, because
Mhm.
before we started, I told you that's what was happening to me. I kept hearing those voices, and I thought I was going crazy. And so I
Mhm.
spent a few weeks in the mental institution because I thought I was going nuts. Of course,
Mhm.
everybody tell you I am nuts. That's a whole nother show.
Let's go and say define nuts. Yeah. Like judgment, like, what's crazy? But
um, it,
yeah, so Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say that I've always been drawn to a specific number, and it's always been 159. I don't know why, but that's always been my number.
Yes. Okay. So then 159. So part of that story would be there are people that have been down that path, right?
Mhm.
So I would look up what does 159 mean? And then it doesn't always necessarily have to mean exactly what you read, but what they'll do is say, okay, you're on this path. Like, okay, we got his attention. This is kind of what it means. See if it feels and resonates with you. Keep what does. And then before you know it, it'll lead you to something else. It'll lead you to something else. And so then it could become 159. If that's the number that means like a comfort to you or whatever that message is, you may then be doing something arbitrarily and then poof, 159 comes up. And it's like their signal, like, we're there with you, Kyle. Like, all is well. And that'll keep you going and ascending. But look it up. Yeah. 159. Like, what does that number mean? See if it resonates with you. And then go from there. And that'll take you to the next step and to the next step.
I got you. I got you. Well, my daughter always seems to see 3 consecutive even numbers, and my wife sees the consecutive 3 odd numbers. So
Mm-hmm.
and of course they both have abilities, and I've always been kind of curious why are they all. I mean, we'll be driving down the road and they'll see a license plate. Look at that, or it'll be on a billboard, or what have you.
Exactly. Yeah. It's their language. Everybody has a spirit team.
Right.
Like just like everybody has, and on average each person has 3 people on their spirit team, one of them being your own individual guardian angel
Okay.
that's designed just to serve you. That's it. But the thing about it is they are also under the guidance of, they really are not going to just interfere with your life. You see what I'm saying? Because you still
It's
have free will. So it's like you have to welcome them in. You have to talk to them, ask them, like, hey, I'm open to your, as I say, intuitive feedback. What is it that I need to know in this situation? Start to develop that partnership with your guardian angel. And then what you'll find on your spirit team is that people will then replace seats. So if you're dealing with a health issue, for example, you may have Archangel Raphael that will come on your, think of like board of directors that comes on your team to say, hey, giving you insight, giving you energy about increasing your health and what's kind of going on. Later on, you might be having an issue of, okay, I really need to study. I have this test that I need to take. You have another angel that specializes in coming in and helping you to do that. So the seats will move, but one seat for sure, as I like to say, is God, ultimate source, and your guardian angel. And then there's usually someone else that kind of flows with that. And that can be anyone from from angels to ancestors, of course, your higher self, like all of those things, but they have a relationship of how they talk with you in
mm,
your language. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure that you can have a language and a vibe in your house, right? Between your family, between your wife, y'all can give each other a look, have a keyword, a phrase that's just for y'all that nobody else would know about. To anybody else, it could be like, what the heck are they talking about?
yeah.
Right? So it's the same thing with your spirit team. And that's what they're saying. So like 159 evidently must be a language between you and the spiritual realm of how they communicate with you.
Okay. I
The
got
odd
you.
numbers or the even numbers would be like for your wife or for your daughter. They're going to speak to you in the language that works for you, that resonates for you. With the internet now, we just have an easy source that allows us to say, hey, does somebody else have this kind of connection with 159 as well? Then you can go and do a Google search and be like, yes, I get it. I don't feel as crazy or weird. Like, that's exactly what it means for me. So it's like, take advantage of it, use it.
Yeah, I hear
So
that.
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
So when did you first make the correlation between the um being a life coach and being intuitive?
Mm-hmm. Um, Again, because at that point, like when I became a coach, it was there. But what I attributed to more so was my education.
Okay.
Because you remember, imposter syndrome, I have to get a certification, I have to have my education. Like, I have degrees, MBA, like all of the educational stuff that would say the words that are coming out my mouth are based in some type of education, solid knowledge base that people feel comfortable with. And so that was the premise of saying what would make me necessarily a good coach. I realized that sometimes there would be something of a particular question that would come in that would have me to ask had nothing to do with the basis of my education. In the sense, what I mean, I don't know in particular why I'm supposed to ask you this question that's going to hit you right where you're at. Like, I was just thinking about this. I had no idea. That has nothing to do with education. That's more of the spirit realm. But that's when I came back in January, what I realized I was not a I released the feeling of a fraud of saying I didn't know all the answers. I don't know why I know to ask you this particular question or say this particular thing to you or show this particular video to you or song or whatever they give me to say present this to this person because they're now ready to receive that. It wasn't until I realized I was able to, relieve it that it's not just me. It's a spirit team that's helping me. Once I did that, like I said, from a year ago, it's all been combined. It's That's the premise. Like I will use cards, I will use the Bible, I will use songs or videos or whatever it is that they're saying, this is what's going to help this person in this moment.
What's amazing to me is I got on matchmaker.fm, and no, it's not a dating
Mm,
site.
no.
To get
A lot of
in,
people think that.
I had to tell my wife, I said, look, because I give her access to everything. I have nothing to hide. You want to look at my emails, look at my emails. I don't care.
Right.
And I said, now, if you get on my email and you see a email that says matchmaker, I said, it's not a dating site. I promise. You can look at it. It's, just
It's
it, it's the
connecting hosts
yeah,
of shows with yes, yes.
right. So I'll get on there, and because they'll send you an email that'll say, hey, we have some suggestions for you according
Hmm.
to what you put in your bio and all that. And I'll get on, and I'll just be able to look at certain people and just know
Yes.
if there'll be a good fit, or if I'm supposed to get some kind of message from them. I know it might
Hmm.
sound crazy to some people, but it every time, even if it's something, say this person is totally the opposite of me, does not think like me whatsoever, maybe
Right.
they come across as they're supposed to be positive, and they for some reason end up being negative. I've had that happen, yes, but
Hmm.
it gives me a better understanding of other people
Yes.
and how to help other people, which, I mean, that's what the whole show is about, trying to motivate people and inspire them. And I mean, you already see with social media and everything else how much negativity is out there in the world. If we don't start drawing that positive energy, we're going to lose
Hmm.
this world. We're going to lose
Yeah.
this country. You'll lose your own home. So, uh, you know, I'm trying to get to a point here, but
Hmm.
before I do get to that point, what was your first success with using that with someone else?
So I would say the very first to where I did something was I was doing a networking meeting with a young lady I had never met before, and we were talking. But before we had that meeting, I was struggling with buying my first deck of tarot cards
Okay.
in the store because I was going back and forth like, no, like you, Felicia, you go to tarot cards, like that's like you're really opening some kind of door, right? And so I remember being in the store and didn't get them. And then like a week goes by, I wind up getting them because they just continue to come up.
Right.
So I had the cards like on the desk behind me out of sight. So mind you, I'm at this point, I'm not advertising that I have this ability whatsoever. So we go on through our interview and she sits up And she says, I sense that you're a spiritual person. And I said, yes. And then she just sits there. And then the next words out of my mouth were, do you want a reading? She sits up again. She said, yes, please. And so, mind you, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, what? So I go, I get the cards, I do my thing, I give her the message that she's supposed to get. She's encouraged. But that was like the first sign of like, wow, okay. Like it was presenting that you're a spiritual person. I know you have these abilities because I had to get out of my head because it goes back to what we were talking about before. I felt as though I had to go and study. I had to
Mm-hmm.
know what all the cards meant and the two of cups, the three of wands. And like if I didn't know every single thing about these cards and I give somebody a reading, you're being a fake, you're being a fraud. But it was so I realized that that's not how it was supposed to be. It was just a remembering. It was just sharing, this is what I see, giving the reading. And even afterwards, I think I remember going to the book and was like, let me read the book. 'Cause I don't want to give you this wrong message, whatever. And she was like, I got the message that I had. It was very loud and clear. Thank you. And then that's when it was like, oh, wow. Okay. Because that was the first time I was using a tool that was obvious that somebody could judge of the cards with her. But yet it met her right where she was at. So I would say that was probably like the first occurrence that I had with someone using
Was right off the bat.
right off the bat. Like
Wow.
they didn't give any time. It was like, but then I go back as you because you reflect and you think about the situation. It was like, you need to get this deck of cards because I need for you to have these cards. But when you're going to have this conversation with this young woman, she's going to be able to get her message from that. It was like I'm facilitating the conversations, the liaison between helping people to receive their message because I'm not what people probably would judge. When you think of like a witch or into like people think of dark things and
Right.
all of this, they wear black all the time or they have like all this, weird stuff like what we see portrayed on TV. But when you see me, it's like, oh, okay. Like she looks normal, like not here to spook you or scare you or anything of the sort. And so I think that's where it's saying like you're going to be able to welcome people with their message and be able to talk, with them. And that was like the first time it was like, oh, okay. And then of course since then I've had, you kind of go forward and you go back and you go forward because you're like, did I make that up? Did that really happen? No, so the imposter syndrome, you judge yourself with that. But I've had other, occurrences since then that there's no there's no education reason to explain the occurrences that I've had with other individuals. There have been
Mm.
times I had a conversation and I didn't realize how much of an impact to have people and like, because now we live in social media, they'll post something, they'll be like, I had this conversation with her that just absolutely changed my life. And you're like, wow, I had no idea. But that's why they're just saying, this is what you're here for. You're kind of like this liaison of helping people. And this is what we want you to do. And so that's what I do.
That's your calling.
Yeah, that's the calling. But I had to get out of the way because it doesn't look like anybody else.
Yeah. Everybody
And
works differently.
everybody works differently. But the things that at that point, like you look on YouTube, you look on social media, especially like with cards, because I wasn't feeling led to learn. It's like I read over stuff and it's like, oh, okay. But it's not, like you said, having the education of saying you got to know every single little thing. You have to memorize this or you have to memorize that. It's like I know different things in a lot of different areas to where it's like I could use it to enable to connect with people. And like I said, that's from oracle cards, the Bible to songs, like all these different things. But because, as I would say, I wasn't deep in one area. I'm not just all, oracle cards or tarot cards. I'm not just all speaking to the dead. spirits, not just all, all clairaudient. It's like a conglomerate of all of that to just be available for them to use you how they want to use you. And I'm like, okay. But the only thing that they clearly gave me for was the message of I have my show on LinkedIn, and they kept giving me the message that we want you to do this show, doing your kind of readings and having conversations with people, doing it live, doing it on LinkedIn. And if you know about LinkedIn, it's the professional, network,
Yeah.
right?
I trust
And
that a lot more than I do others, for sure.
yeah, yeah, it's so, it wouldn't be no big deal to see maybe somebody doing a card reading on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or all the other ones, but on LinkedIn, mm, but that's where the two worlds that I came from, the business world, the seriousness, was then coming into alignment with the spiritual gifts that I had. And then that's when, I delayed it for a very long time until
Mm.
eventually it was just like, just go forth and just do this. And so I put my show on the network, and this is how they continue to validate. Because like I said, we talked about matchmaker, right? They
Hmm.
continue to validate that this is what the path that you want to do. So I started that show in November. And to be a guest on my show, as you can appreciate and like my show currently, as to become a guest on my show, is booked all the way already through May.
Oh, wow.
And that's not like with me
Not even trying, huh?
recruiting. Mm-mm, no. And it was
Wow.
like, hey, like we want to come. So it was valid. These business people, they're doing all these different things and like having these conversations because it's like, oh, wow. But that's how they were saying, you do what we ask you to do, go forth. We'll make the rest of it easy. And the fact that I look at my schedule and I'm like, people are like, okay, yeah, I can come on the May such and such a day. And if you have someone to cancel, let me know if I can come on like sooner. It was just like, oh, okay. Like this is what you wanted me to do. But at first, yeah, it was fear. I had to work to my own FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Cause I'm like, LinkedIn, there's no going back from this as far as in, other employers or W-2s or whatever the case may be. But this is who I am. Um, but it's been beautiful. But that's how they show you like this is what you're supposed to be doing. The connections that I've made with people, and you can imagine as you have this show and you're doing the shows, just the conversations that happen after
Yeah.
the camera is turned off. It's just been like you just don't know. Like this was da da da, and just the amazement to that. It's beautiful. So just trust and go with the flow that you're doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be doing, and in the audience that you're supposed to be reaching. And yeah.
So I want to get into the point that I was trying to make a few minutes
Mm-hmm.
ago, and it's going to be a question. When you're doing readings and things like that, how much
Mm-hmm.
of it is just a gut feeling? How much of it is something that you're getting from your spirit guides, or is it basically the same thing? And my second part would be,
Mm-hmm.
how would you let people know this is just isn't some kind of parlor trick where somebody's just picking up on, your little twitches and things like that to, you know what I'm trying to say? Because I've run across
Yes.
charlatans like that before.
Yes, Kyle. So let me start with number two, because that was part of my fear. Because usually when people do readings, usually as they say, it's like somebody go in and the person that's doing the reading is doing all the talking. Like they'll come out and say, I see this, and this, and this, this, and this. And I was talking to my spirit team and I was like, y'all know that's not how mine works. Like, I don't just have cards looking and then just start talking. When I went to YouTube videos and they would call what they call the collective readings, which I've got many insight, but it doesn't come to where I can just lay out cards and be like, oh, and just talk through the cards and this is the reading. And so that was part of the reason why there was such a delay, because it felt fraudish. I didn't want the judgment, people thinking like, well, you should be able to just tell me right off the bat. And it's like, no. What mine is that I meet people where they are, and it's always a conversation. That's how it's always been.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I have to hear your words, your energy, and your vibe. And what my ability is that I usually wind up asking a question. And I realize when you start looking at your gifts and abilities, it's like, what do you hear all the time? And what I would get back from people all the time is they would pause, kind of turn their head, like, that's a good question. And they would start thinking. And then it would be like another question. Oh, so that's where the ascension would come from, but they wouldn't have started that ascension without like that particular question.
Mm-hmm.
Then it will become, if they are open and they're having that open meaning, then spirit team would say, okay, now give them this insight that's going to help them as a tool to go to their next step. If you're frustrated and had this big fight with your spouse or something like that, and it's like, okay, play this song that's a meditation that's going to comfort them, that's going to be able to help them. But it always started with a conversation with me. But I don't come with any intentions of saying, I'm intentionally going to read you. Like when you come on car, I'm not just intentionally like going to read you. Like, no, it's just you're having a conversation. And then they might give me a message and I'm like, oh. And then that's when I started asking people. I'll say, if I really don't know you, I would say, are you open to intuitive feedback? Either they'll say yes or they'll say no. If they say yes, I'll be like, okay, the spirit team is telling me to ask you about this or give you this insight to go look at this. And then they will confirm what that means. And what I had to release is that sometimes it could be in that moment or it could be a couple of days later. And they'll be like, oh, she had already kind of like told me that. But I'm not labeling myself. I don't predict the future. I don't do any things. I'm just giving you your message that you're supposed to receive in here at this moment. So you could be ready for whatever the next moment is and the next moment. So that to say, that is, there's no intention, there's no expectation. I'm just having a conversation with you that's going to help you to, ascend on that area. So with that, it's literally, that's why what was so difficult at first as well, because it was different for everybody, because everybody is different. Everybody is at a different point on their journey. Something that I may say to you, someone else, they're nowhere near that. I have to fine tune whatever that language is or for wherever they're at that moment. But for me, it is a conversation. It is talking. It is verbalizing. And a lot of people realize that. And thankfully, that's why the premise of me, it comes under life coach. Because life coach, you expect to help you with your life and processing you. I'm not here to give you the answer. It's going to solve every little bit of your life. I'm here to help you to own your own power of your authority, which was another reason of a challenge of being a coach for me, because, or that's different from readers and stuff. It's like, you shouldn't have to come to me every week.
True.
Like that's not how I'm set up. It's not set up to come to me because that's disempowering. Because as I was telling you before, everybody has this ability. I'm more like, you've seen The Wizard of Oz.
Mm.
And the very first witch that Dorothy meets is in Oz is called Miss North. She comes in, she lands. Dorothy's like, where the heck am I? I'm scared. I'm having all these doubts. Well, the first witch, she comes in, she basically tells you like, hey, here's where you're at. This is what's going on. Put these shoes on. And then, here's this golden brick road. Go forth. That's more like what I'm here to do. It's like when you feel like you're just dismayed and just want some insight and there's a message that you need to receive, you get it and you continue on that journey. But I'm not with you every step of the way of that journey. I'm not like your scarecrow or your tin man or your, what's the other?
The lion.
Right. because you got to figure out all those things on your path going for that, which you really, at the end of the day, you had all those qualities in you the whole time.
Yeah.
You just need someone to kind of give you a little insight of what that is, right?
It's funny you mentioned that because I did a video the other day. Sometimes I'll do my own little commentary, and
Uh-huh.
I use that exact same analogy that you just used.
See? You see? This is what I'm talking about. This is what I mean. Exactly. So that would be a word of encouragement that I haven't watched your past episode. I didn't see that. So it's like, okay, have you seen this odd story? Like, for me to connect with that story, to connect with you, is encouragement and validation of what you were talking about. You were definitely on the right path. And that's what I'm saying. I wasn't intentionally reading you, but that's what I would get, exactly what you would say. That's an interesting question. It's funny that you should mention that, because, and it's not, it's it's your team that's coming through to say, yep, here she is. This is what she's talking about. This is
Yeah.
what you're connecting on your path where she was at. Like, you're right where you're supposed to be. And that's how
It-
they work.
yeah. I try to get validation from a lot of things that I've said and done because I do want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I told you I used to preach, and
Mm-hmm.
I actually got to preach at my grandmother's funeral not too long
Mm-hmm.
ago, and I had this message that just was on my heart. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I got up and I preached it, and I think I hurt some people's feelings when I did it. And
Mm-hmm.
somebody really close to me that I feel like maybe she's not going to talk to me anymore because I think
Mm-hmm.
I hurt her feelings. But I kept being told that I I was supposed to preach that message and it was supposed to go out. And like, I still am. Did I do the right thing? Did I do the right thing?
So was the message about telling the odd story, or was it a different
No,
message?
it was
Okay.
it was I I I don't want to get into specifics just in
Mm-hmm.
case, but
Oh yeah, you didn't have to. I was just wondering, was it that talking about that connection of that story? Totally
no,
understand that.
but the whole story
Yeah.
was it was about material things and how so many
Mm-hmm.
people will get wrapped up in material things and not realize the how people impact you just by their lives, and
Mm-hmm.
that if you are so wrapped up into the material, then you can hurt other people, in your life, because
Mm-hmm.
that's all you seem to care about. You should care about the people around you, your family, your friends. And I mean, it was a lot more to it, but that's kind of the gist of
Yeah.
it.
So tell me about, so when you were talking about the Oz, what was the premise of that? What were
uh
you saying?
oh my gosh. The whole thing was that and this is just kind of a paraphrase, there's still a lot more to this, but the reason why I brought up the Wizard of Oz was because you have certain things that you already possess that you don't
Mm-hmm.
realize that you have. Like, this Tin Man, he said he wanted a
Mm-hmm.
heart, but he already cared about people. And then the Scarecrow, I want a brain, but he was already
Mm-hmm.
thinking and all that. And the lion, as cowardly as he may seem, he really had a strength in him. And there was definitely a lot more to it than that, but that part of the message was what I was trying to convey. That's why I brought up the Wizard of Oz.
Okay. Yeah, so having those traits that you already had. So the connection, you're open to intuitive feedback.
Of course, of course.
Okay. Um, the next level, the deeper of whatever that situation that was kind of on your heart and your mind about the friend that disagreed about what you said at the funeral. Go back onto the next layer of the Wizard of Oz, because the initial one people talk about are the traits and abilities that people have. What That's what I went to go look here, is that the history of The Wizard of Oz was also had an underlining message about the economy and finances and all of that.
Really? I did not know
There,
that.
there's another meaning to the Wizard of Oz about that. Yes.
Wow.
And that was part of the reason why the Wizard of Oz was created, was really talking about the economics of what was going on in the society at the time.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
It was a deeper message that I didn't look at.
Uh-huh.
Gosh, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that movie.
Yeah, because a lot of people were talking about that. I was looking to see about that because most people know about that you have those traits, courage and all of that, but there's also an element of people say that story is really about, because it's the Golden Big Road and the Emerald City, like they were comparing all that, what was going on, the capitalism and all of that in society about that. So evidently there's a connection for you to look at that there's another layer behind that, and they may help you to find comfort and ease as you think about that, about your words that you said at the funeral.
You know, a few years before, my grandfather had passed away, and the family was all in this rush to like divide up all this stuff, and it was very difficult for me to do at the time, and they kept pressing me to come do it, come do it, come do it. I had a cousin that just wanted to get all this stuff that he had and go sell it, and I'm like, I'd rather give it to somebody who could use it than just to go profit off of it, because I mean he had woodworking tools like you wouldn't believe. And I those had sentimental value to it, but I knew there were people out there that could use it, and I think that's what my grandfather would have wanted. And I wasn't all about, oh, what can I get out of this, oh, is there money in it for me? And when you let those things get in the way, then you can ruin a family. And that's what I was trying to avoid. And unfortunately, because I mean, my grandmother on my dad's side had passed away some years ago, and I had family that had nothing to do with her, but went in and started claiming all her stuff. It's like, well, I was the only one that really went and visited her, and not that I wanted to take all that stuff. I would rather have my relationship with my family than the material stuff. But the point being is, you didn't care about her when she was alive. Now all of a sudden she's gone. You want to see what you can get out of the deal. So that was another aspect of the sermon, was those things don't mean anything. It's family that should come first.
Yeah. So I'm briefly just perusing some of this. So yeah, some of your work is going to be reading about the story, but the behind the scenes story about what the author experienced. To read.
I'm gonna have to read through that.
Yes. Yeah, because it's a whole nother, layer behind that. Like I said, there's a story in the book was about economics and capitalism, but then generally speaking, there was, issues going on with his family and the life and all of that. And it's just where it is that's the path. Go down that, and that'll bring you some comfort and information on dealing with that scenario.
I hate seeing families get broke up over material things and money, stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I want to be very generous when I do come into money. I just don't want that to be the underlying thing. It has to be family first. Didn't have on my dad's side, family didn't seem to come first. Yeah,
Mm,
once, especially once my great grandfather and great grandmother passed away,
yeah.
there wasn't the family gatherings and things like that. I mean, my mom's side of the family, there was a little bit more closeness, but I just could see it coming that once my grandmother was gone, that was going to be it.
I think that the insight, uh, the movie won't be the same for you. It's like once you do that, the history and real, you'll see the underlining veil that a lot of people won't see about that movie. That a lot of people that you're going to probably be able to relate to. So, like for example, there's Munchkin Land. They were a type of people. But then there's, another land of where individuals were, as I say, where they smelled the poppy seeds and they went to sleep. There are some people that are just going to want to stay asleep. They don't want to deal with the society. Then you have like the monkeys, and they represent a whole another meaning in that movie. So it's kind of like there was this very deep meaning about the movie that a lot of people just look at and just say, "Oh, okay, I got the initial cover," but now you're ready to go along with that, and that is going to be tied with your how you share and how you connect with people. That's just going to give you another insight that as you talk about ways of how you can share stories with people where they are and can resonate. Like that's
Mm.
one of those ways. It's an example. I mean, you had the book, then you had a musical, and it's like all of these things that are underneath that when people are ready, they'll be able to see. So um, that's the feedback that I got for you. Is that since you already talked about it, for me to talk about it, for you to go back, read that, learn a little bit about the economic side of that and the history of the story of the book. And you can probably generally start with the like no promotion of a particular website, but just Google
I can do
Wizard
that.
of Oz. What Wizard of Oz? What was the Wizard of Oz about? And
I'm
then go from
I'm
there.
gonna do that this afternoon, as a matter of fact. Well, I've
Okay.
always felt like there was some kind of lesson that I needed to learn before I was able to get to the next level. Like I know that next level is coming, but there's for some reason it's always delayed, and I need to learn a certain lesson before I could get there. Maybe that's it. I I hope so. Maybe that was supposed to be what I was supposed to learn, and so I could get there.
Yeah.
I
And
just
so,
like
and what
success was supposed to be
success?
there. I keep more and more people that have done readings for me has said the same thing. You're going to be a success, but they've never told me what that thing was that was supposed to get me there. They just say it's there, but it for I don't know. It's for years and years and years. I've had that in the back of my mind. Something is standing in the way
Mm,
of me to getting to that next level.
okay. Yeah. And see, this is how when we co-create an experience of the question that you asked me, where you're like, well, how does it show up for you? How do you do all those different things? And it's like of just being present in the moment, just answering the questions and like trusting the stories that I'm supposed to share. So the fact that your audience just witnessed what that exactly looks like for me. It's share this story. Then you talk about your story, like, oh, I was just talking about the Wizard of Oz. Okay. Then you're talking about the funeral. So it was like, okay, there's a connection between that. And like I know that that story is about also is about money and those different things, and like there's messages, and there was kind of like this whole history with the author behind that. And then like it'll show you the parallels of what you're supposed to kind of go through. And that's what I do. As you were saying, like you could go to other people and they will tell you you're going to be successful, you're going to be successful, but it coincided with the example of what I was saying about Mrs. North. Ms. North told her, put these shoes on, right? Go find the yellow brick road, don't take these shoes off, go forth. And I don't know what that's going to look like for you, but that's what the word they told me to tell you is go read this story, go learn about this Wizard of Oz, explore what that is, And that's going to take you down to the journey that you need in order to go whatever to that, as they say, ascend to the next level of success. That's what you need. You need an action step. Because I'm not that person who's like, oh yeah, you're successful. Like, okay. I'm just connecting the pieces of giving you an action step that's going to actually help you to ascend to the next level of success. But it's one of those things that's difficult. Like, how do you put that in copyright? What
Yeah.
just happened between us? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's like, well, it's this or that. And it's like one of those things, like what people say, like, you just have to experience it. And thankfully, what I realized is that this is what I was, before I had the fear of, because, like it's a face to it. It's my face is, your face, and you're saying these things. But it's like, hopefully, as you felt, there was nothing like in that particular card. I didn't pull a single card. I didn't do anything. It was literally, you already have a knowing. Tell this story. Listen to what he says. Now say this.
See, my whole skepticism through the years, because I was always that skeptic. I never believed in any of this stuff. My thing was, people just tell you what you want to hear, or they'll get you hooked and then say, well, if you want this, then you need to come back to me and I'll make up this potion or this talisman or whatever. And mind you, I've never really paid for a reading. I'm surrounded by those kind of folks, and they will just tell me. Sometimes I'll ask, but most of the time they just tell me. And the reason why I started to believe was that the first actual reading that I got, the lady who's a real close friend of ours now, but she started bringing up stuff that I know people say this might sound cliche, but there was stuff that she said there was absolutely no way that she could have known. I mean, to the most minute details. And one of them, she started going, how come I keep hearing the water boy? And my wife and I looked at each other and we just laughed, because between me and her and the kids, we're always quoting from the water boy. That's like our favorite movie. So, it'll just be in the car and all of a sudden one of us will go, Gatorade, H2O,
See, that's what I said earlier, talking about your family has a language that only you and your family will understand and get that. Right. And it's the same thing of like your spirit world. Like they're going to talk to you in a language that only you would get. And other people are like, oh, well, I don't understand. What does that make any sense? And what's that joke? And why is that funny? And all that. Like, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's just now, are you open, to that? And like for me, that's what I like sometimes had struggled before. I was like, what do I call this? And what do I say? And this, because I would not have necessarily categorized that as a reading. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
But that was a validation to me that this was something that was real and not something somebody was just making up. Because I have been to those that are just like, oh, well, you're gonna be rich and you're gonna marry this beautiful person and you're gonna drive around in a fancy car. I'm like, you're just telling me something that everybody wants to hear.
But feel like you think like feels good to where you're at. And that's what I'm saying. And even with those, there are times that you can, like, if you're going to certain people for certain things, everybody's equipped differently. And that's why I said, like, for me, it's about having a conversation with someone, listening to them, and then just being open to, oh, okay, that's what, all right, so I'm supposed to make this connection. And then you'll go to your assignment. Now, after this, we in the cameras, if you don't go and look that story up, then completely on you.
Right,
But
exactly.
it's like, I did the part of saying, okay, I was serving, like, I'm just supposed to say, go do this up. And it's not for me to sit up here and read all this stuff and just tell you, because that's taking away part of your experience and part of your journey that's going to help you to develop. And that's why I say I'm not like one of those coaches, because struggle with, do I have a 6-month program coaching, 3 months and all that? Like I've done some of them and I was like, it just doesn't, always a line. It's like I don't want people to feel as though they have to come to me every week for all of these different things. And like they kept going back and saying, it's these one off kind of conversations that you have with people. Like have this conversation, and you go on to the next, and you're just kind of sending off all these people just on your journey. That's
Mm.
what you're supposed to do.
Well,
That's it.
I guess in what you do, you say something that can resonate with somebody. It's almost like you've got the key, you've opened the door, you say there's something on the other side of the door, but they have to actually walk in
Walk through the door.
and see it. Okay,
Exactly.
I get the gist of that.
Yes.
So if people want to find you, how do they go about doing so?
Yeah. So I have my live broadcast on LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
each Tuesdays at 1 p.m. live. And then you can find me on YouTube. So I'm posting those clips there. But then I have, of course, my own website, which is sevenfoldcoaching.com. And they go there, learn more about me. I have some free stuff that helps people on their journey, learning more about themselves, imposter syndrome, emotional guidance skill, because those are a lot of the things that I coach about living smart. But then basically, it's like if you want a private session with me, you're able to do that. And then, of course, you can. What I love about the shows that I have that are live and recorded, that people have come back to me, is like I could be talking to somebody else, and they'll drop my DM. They're like, "You totally connected with me," and I was like, "Okay, you were meant to see that show when you were meant to see it," and those are places where people can find me.
Well, I will put those links in the description so they can find you. And
Thank you, Kyle.
can you come back again? Because I find you really fascinating.
Indeed, we could have another conversation, Kyle.
I
We
would love
can.
that. I would love that. Well,
Yes.
unfortunately, our time is up. And like I said, I would like to have you back. And I want to thank you so, so much for taking time out of your day to be here with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kyle, and thank you for those that are watching. May you continue to live smart and ascend to new levels of success.
Amen to that. Well,
Yeah.
if you're new to the channel, thank you for dropping by, and I hope you come back. Hit that subscribe button. And if you're a regular to the channel, thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. Get that word out there to everyone. And until the next one, everyone, please take care, be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network